The dusty air of the frontier world of Delvar Prime carried a heavy silence, punctuated only by the distant sound of Imperial patrol ships roaring across the skies. For years, the Galactic Empire had ruled the planet with an iron fist, its soldiers stomping through villages to remind the populace of their place beneath the Emperor's rule. Delvar Prime was insignificant in the grand scheme, a backwater world, stripped of its resources and left with little but the Empire's cruelty. In a quiet corner of the planet, Ephraim Carter tended to his crops with calloused hands. A humble farmer, he kept to himself, avoiding trouble with the Empire. Yet trouble had found him. The latest crackdown was brutal, as Imperial officers rounded up villagers under suspicion of harboring resistance fighters. Ephraim, gray-haired and weathered, stood with a quiet dignity as an Imperial officer barked accusations. Despite his protests, his fate was sealed. Dragged to the center of the village square, Ephraim's execution was meant to send a message to the locals. Defiance would be met with swift and merciless justice. The blinding flash of the blaster ended Ephraim's life before the crowd of onlookers. The soldiers barely spared him a glance as they left his lifeless body in the dirt, confident that this forgotten old man would soon fade from memory. What they didn't know was that Ephraim Carter wasn't just any farmer. Light years away, the news reached General Marcus Carter, Ephraim's only son and a decorated officer of the Earth Interstellar Alliance Marines. The report cut through Marcus like a blade. He stared at the message, his jaw tightening with unspoken rage. The Empire thought Ephraim Carter was a nobody. They were wrong. Marcus swore vengeance, and the galaxy would soon witness the fury of a son. General Marcus Carter stood on the bridge of the EIS Resolute, Earth's premier interstellar battlecruiser, as the light of distant stars reflected off his steel-gray uniform. Marcus was a man built for war, tall, broad-shouldered, and with a face carved by years of combat. His dark eyes carried an intensity that made even the most hardened soldiers wary, and his reputation as a ruthless strategist only added to the myth surrounding his name. In his presence, respect was a given. Fear was often the price. Marcus was not the type to indulge in sentiment. To the galaxy, he was a ghost of steel and discipline. Few knew about his ties to Delvar Prime. Fewer still about the father he had worked so hard to protect by keeping his name out of the official records. But when the report of Ephraim Carter's execution crossed his desk, Marcus was no longer a stoic commander. His father's death was more than a personal loss. It was a challenge to everything Marcus stood for. He wasted no time. Marcus composed a direct message to the Galactic Empire. Every word was razor-sharp, laced with an unspoken promise of retaliation. He demanded the names of the soldiers involved and an immediate statement of accountability for the senseless execution of an innocent civilian. The Empire's response came quicker than expected, but it wasn't one of contrition. Instead, it was an icy dismissal. Ephraim Carter's death, the transmission stated, was a necessary demonstration of Imperial authority, a trivial matter unworthy of further attention. Marcus's fingers tightened around the edge of his console as he read the reply. The arrogance, the cruelty. It was exactly the kind of hubris he'd fought against in his career, and now it was personal. Lieutenant Harper, Marcus called to his second-in-command, his deep voice calm yet suffused with danger. Assemble the Valkyrie team. Brief them for immediate deployment. The Valkyrie team was no ordinary unit. It was an elite strike force that had earned its fearsome reputation under Marcus's command in previous campaigns. Each member, hand-picked for their deadly skills and unyielding loyalty, was male, reflecting a camaraderie born out of shared battles and unspoken understanding. They owed Marcus not just their careers but their lives, and when he called, they answered without hesitation. As Harper began rallying the troops, Marcus stood before a tactical display of Delvar Prime. His focus zeroed in on the Imperial garrison, one of many outposts spread thin across the galaxy, commanded by a figure he'd encountered before, Colonel Tarkis. Tarkis wasn't just responsible for overseeing the crackdown. He was the officer who had personally ordered Ephraim's execution. A plan took shape in Marcus's mind, methodical and unforgiving. The assault would be surgical, devastating, and symbolic. It wasn't enough to strike Tarkis. The mission needed to reverberate throughout the imperial hierarchy. Marcus wanted the Empire to realize its mistake, to fear the consequences of its arrogance. Days later, in the war room, Marcus stood before the Valkyrie team as they reviewed the operation. "We hit hard. We leave nothing standing," he declared, his voice steady and resolute. "But this isn't just about revenge. This is about sending a message. No one takes from Earth without paying the price. And Tarkis," Marcus's lip curled in disdain, "he's going to pay with interest." The briefing ended, and the men dispersed, steeling themselves for the task ahead. Marcus lingered behind, staring at a grainy image of the village square on Delvar Prime, the place where his father had fallen. His jaw tightened. For too long, the Galactic Empire had believed itself untouchable. That illusion was about to shatter. The air over Delvar Prime's darkened outskirts was eerily still. The soft hum of the dropship's engines faded as General Marcus Carter and his strike team silently descended into enemy territory. The team, clad in stealth armor that bent light and masked thermal signatures, moved like shadows through the craggy landscape surrounding the Imperial garrison. Marcus led the unit with precision, every step calculated, every movement intentional. A predator among warriors, he radiated a silent intensity that steadied the men around him. Over years of campaigns, they had seen him orchestrate operations that others deemed impossible, and tonight was no different. The Imperial garrison loomed ahead, a squat fortress of gray durasteel bristling with watchtowers and automated defenses. Through his visor, Marcus analyzed the enemy's patrol patterns, highlighting vulnerabilities. They weren't ready for this. "This is where it begins," Marcus murmured into the team's comms. "Let's show them what happens when you push too far." At his signal, the team launched their ambush. EMP charges disabled key systems, plunging the garrison into chaos. Smoke grenades hissed, obscuring the attackers' movements while advanced drones targeted watchtowers. Imperial soldiers scrambled, shouting confused orders, only for Marcus's team to systematically pick them off. Marcus moved through the battlefield like a storm, his rifle precise, his combat knife ruthless when it came to close encounters. Every step was efficient, brutal. But as he surged forward, flashes of memory intruded. His father teaching him how to plant seeds in their small farm, sharing simple, patient wisdom. "Patience, son," Ephraim had said, dusting his hands off after a long day. "Everything worthwhile takes time, even revenge." Marcus shoved the memory aside. There would be time to honor his father's legacy later, once justice was delivered. The screams of panicked Imperials filled the comms channels as the Valkyrie team penetrated deeper into the stronghold. Marcus allowed the chaos to build, knowing fear was as powerful a weapon as any blaster. Colonel Tarkis, an imposing man with a deep scar across his face, monitored the invasion from the garrison's central command. His initial sneer of contempt faltered as reports flooded in. Multiple squads down. "We're surrounded." Tarkis slammed a fist onto the console. "Hold the line," he bellowed. "These attackers are nothing more than insurgents." But in the back of his mind, doubt crept in. These weren't ordinary rebels. They were too skilled, too disciplined. Moments later, Marcus breached the command center. A flash of light accompanied the explosion of the reinforced doors, and Tarkis found himself face to face with the man who had orchestrated the carnage. "You don't understand what you're doing." Tarkis spat, scrambling for his weapon. "The Empire will crush you." Marcus moved faster than Tarkis expected, wrenching the blaster from his hands and slamming him against the wall. The colonel gasped for breath, staring into eyes that burned with controlled fury. "You killed an innocent man," Marcus said, his voice low and cold. "An old man who wanted nothing more than to be left in peace. That was my father." Recognition dawned in Tarkis's face, replaced by terror. "Wait, please. I didn't." Marcus leaned closer. "You didn't know. Then know this now. You didn't kill a nobody. You sealed the Empire's fate." The silence stretched for a heartbeat as Tarkis's mouth opened and closed, trying to find words. None came. "No mercy," Marcus said, pulling his sidearm. The single shot echoed through the command center, marking the end of Tarkis's reign. As Marcus stepped back, the echoes of his father's lessons returned. Ephraim had always taught him that life was about balance, about giving and taking with wisdom. Marcus knew his father would have wanted mercy, but this wasn't about mercy. It was about justice. With Colonel Tarkis dead, Marcus turned his focus to the rest of the garrison. The team set explosives in key locations, ensuring nothing would remain of the stronghold. As the final charges were armed, Marcus activated a recording device in the center of the command room. When the explosions rocked the garrison moments later, the message they left behind transmitted directly to the Galactic Empire's network. The hologram of General Marcus Carter appeared before stunned Imperial officers across the galaxy. Clad in his battle-worn armor, his expression betrayed no emotion as he delivered his warning. "You thought you could murder an innocent man and walk away. You were wrong. This is just the beginning. You started this. I will finish it." The transmission ended as the remnants of the Imperial garrison collapsed into smoldering ruin. Back aboard the EIS Resolute, Marcus removed his helmet, his face streaked with dirt and resolve. He stared at the distant stars, knowing the path ahead would be long and bloody. But for his father, and for all those the Empire had wronged, he was ready. The Galactic Empire's decree was clear. General Marcus Carter and his forces were branded as terrorists. Holovids broadcast the Empire's denunciation across star systems, calling for his immediate capture. Yet the embers of rebellion that Marcus had ignited burned brighter with every passing day. On suppressed worlds, the oppressed saw him not as a terrorist, but as a symbol of hope. His bold actions, paired with his cutting words, "They started this. We will finish it," spread like wildfire. As the Empire dispatched reinforcements to crush the uprising, Marcus saw opportunity. Operating from a hidden stronghold, he coordinated operations with a level of precision that left even his enemies in awe. One of his advisors, a grizzled Marine named Commander Hayden Grant, approached him as reports came in of growing uprisings on multiple planets. "Marcus," Grant said, the admiration evident in his gravelly voice, "you're not just fighting a battle. You're starting a revolution." Marcus, clad in his combat armor, his face lit by the glow of tactical displays, gave a small, almost imperceptible smirk. "The Empire underestimated us. That's their first mistake. Their second will be letting me breathe long enough to destroy them." Marcus made public appearances on newly liberated worlds, surrounded by his brothers in arms. His commanding presence inspired men to fight and terrified their enemies. He showed no hesitation, no weakness. Every speech, every rally cry was a declaration of defiance against the Empire's rule, each word sharpening the blade of rebellion. The Interstellar Alliance was slow to act officially, but Marcus knew where to pull strings. Using his long-standing connections within Earth's Marine Corps, he reached out to former comrades. Among them was Captain Darius Kane, a battle-hardened officer who shared Marcus's unyielding resolve. When Marcus's request came, Kane answered without hesitation. "I don't just owe you my life, Marcus," Kane said in a secure transmission, his jaw set in determination. "I owe you my loyalty. Tell me where to strike." Within weeks, the Resolute was joined by a fleet of warships brimming with Alliance Marines. Marcus held nothing back during their preparation. Combat drills were grueling, tactics unforgiving, and discipline absolute. Marcus ensured that every soldier under his command understood their purpose, not just to fight, but to win at any cost. Among his gathered forces, the camaraderie among men shone. Veterans shared tales of past battles, their voices thick with pride and determination. Younger recruits absorbed these stories, finding inspiration in their commander's brutal efficiency and unwavering conviction. Marcus turned his forces into an engine of destruction, striking symbolic blows against the Empire. He specifically targeted high-profile outposts, crippling supply chains and dismantling propaganda networks. The precision of each victory left the Empire reeling. One of the most impactful operations took place on the industrial world of Vulture's IV, where Marcus's forces sabotaged a starship production facility, crippling the Empire's ability to rebuild its fleet. The mission was led personally by Marcus and Captain Kane. They stormed the facility, overwhelming defenses with deadly efficiency. Marcus's commanding presence on the battlefield and Kane's razor-sharp tactics sent shockwaves through the Imperial chain of command. As explosions ripped through the facility, Marcus left behind another holovid recording. His voice, calm but laced with icy determination, echoed across Imperial channels. "Every ship you lose, every base we destroy, is blood you've spilled unnecessarily. The day you ended my father's life, you sowed the seeds of your own destruction." The Empire's upper echelons convened in desperation. The name Marcus Carter now inspired fear in even their most seasoned officers. The Empire assembled its most powerful fleet to crush Marcus once and for all. Their warships, bristling with weaponry and reinforced by advanced troops, represented the pinnacle of their strength. Marcus faced them with grim determination. Outnumbered but not outmatched, he rallied his fleet for the ultimate confrontation. As the Imperial fleet descended on Rutharia, a former farming colony turned battlefield, Marcus took command from the bridge of the Resolute. Tactical displays lit up the darkened command center as warnings flashed about the enemy's sheer numbers. "We've faced worse odds," Marcus said, his voice steady. The men around him straightened, their faith in their commander unwavering. The battle was a brutal clash of wits and firepower. Marcus anticipated the Empire's every move, using their arrogance against them. He lured their fleet into asteroid fields where his ships could ambush with devastating torpedoes. Marcus's personal strike teams boarded larger Imperial vessels, planting explosives and sowing chaos. Captain Kane coordinated ground forces with equal ferocity, leading shock troops in an overwhelming assault on the planet's surface to recapture the key colony. In the final moments, as the Imperial flagship, a colossal dreadnought named the Sovereign, bore down on the Resolute, Marcus made his decisive move. He baited the dreadnought into firing its devastating main cannon, only to redirect the blast into its own fleet using carefully positioned decoy ships and reflective shields. The Sovereign crumbled under its own firepower, and with its destruction, the remaining Imperial forces retreated. The battlefield lay silent, smoke rising from the wreckage of the once dominant Imperial fleet. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his gaze fixed on the burning remnants of the Sovereign. "This is far from over," Marcus muttered to himself. His clenched fist trembled with the weight of his resolve. Around him, his crew stood in awed silence. They had achieved the impossible, yet Marcus's mind was already on the next move. Through acts of unrelenting vengeance, he had turned a personal tragedy into a rallying cry for revolution. The Empire's days were numbered, and the galaxy knew it. Marcus Carter had become their reckoning. The galaxy shifted on its axis. Where once the Empire's shadow loomed unchallenged, now there was hesitation, uncertainty, and fear. Marcus Carter's relentless campaign had become a beacon of defiance, inspiring suppressed worlds to rise against their oppressors. The Empire's expansion ground to a halt as its leaders scrambled to secure their remaining strongholds. On the quiet farmland where it all began, Marcus stood at his father's grave. The simple marker bore Ephraim Carter's name, a testament to a life lived humbly but with unyielding dignity. Dressed in his combat fatigues, Marcus knelt, running a calloused hand over the weathered stone. Behind him, a light breeze rustled the golden stalks of wheat, a stark contrast to the battles he had waged. "I did what they thought was impossible, father," Marcus murmured, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. The Empire will think twice before they take another innocent life. And if they don't, he paused, clenching his fists. I'll be there to remind them. He straightened, his commanding presence unmistakable even in solitude. I don't know if this is what you would have wanted, but I couldn't stand by and let them get away with it. Not after what they did to you. Turning to leave, Marcus stopped when one of his officers approached, a young, sharp-eyed lieutenant carrying a secure datapad. General, the officer said, his tone hesitant. You need to see this. Marcus accepted the datapad, his sharp gaze scanning the report. An Imperial fleet was mobilizing in secret, far larger than anything he had faced before. His lips pressed into a thin line as he handed the pad back. Then we're not done,